Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and this is the Political Postbox, a weekly video where I just go through a very small number of the comments that appear from the past week on the channel and just go through them in a way that each individual one is something I've got to say something about, but it's not really worth doing an individual video for each one. So, on to the first one. So this is obviously about Brexit, really going to be about Brexit, most of these things. Someone's saying here, I agree with many others here. England is the only one who really wants this, so let them have it. They can cede, I think that means, from the UK and the EU in one swoop, blah, 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 blah. It's not actually true. I mean, even if you split up the United Kingdom into Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England both, voted to leave, if you want to put it that way. But the reality is there's nothing really in the English psyche as such that went for Brexit. What I keep trying to point out is before the Brexit campaign, all parts of the country were perfectly happy to be in the EU. There was a significant majority wanting us to leave the EU in all parts of the UK, but never a majority. Right up until about 2016, there was no, in fact, actually 2016, there was never a majority for this. And the reason why it has come out, all the blaming on England, all the rest of it, is not trying to absolve blame, by the way. It's just because the people in England were targeted, that's all. The campaigns used by Vote Leave as well as Leave.eu were all, if you look at what they were trying to do, all of it was targeting people in England. They weren't targeting people in Scotland. But even then, people in Scotland, about a third of people still voted to leave. They weren't, I suppose, specifically targeting people in Wales either, but obviously a bit of a carry on there. And they weren't targeting people in Northern Ireland. It was, and remember, before this campaign, I had someone in a comment on a video today trying to say, about the campaign. They can't argue against the fact that the campaigns were illegal and used very dodgy tactics. So what they did instead is said, oh, well, it made no difference about the campaign. People were ready to leave the EU anyway. No, they weren't. No poll ever said before this campaign that anyone, that there was a majority in the country or anything close to it, wanted to leave the EU. This all came about as a result of this campaign. So you have to accept that the campaign worked in terms of getting a load of people that wouldn't ordinarily have done to vote leave. And when that campaign, as I say, specifically targets people in England, then of course, if it had targeted people in Scotland or people in Northern Ireland, then, you can sit back if you are in Scotland, Northern Ireland and voted Remain, go, no, it wouldn't, but of course it would. But there was no point. They targeted it where most of the votes were. Most of the vast majority of people in the United Kingdom live in England, particularly the south of England, but England in general. And so that's where they put their efforts there. So it isn't a case of that. I don't think it's even a case of that now. This is why I want a public vote to actually be able to say, we don't actually think there's a majority in the country even want this anymore. Next one. So, if only, I'm afraid. Conservative political parties are doomed. We do not need conservative politics as a counterbalance to liberal politics. Unfortunately, conservatives have gone to the extreme and have become a dangerous threat to world peace and the planet's survival. I'll take that last one first. There is no danger to the planet's survival, with or without an apostrophe. Sorry, teacher. No danger at all. We're the ones who face the danger from climate change, not the planet. The planet will still be the planet a long time later. But anyway, back onto the first one. Conservative political parties are doomed. Unfortunately not. I'm afraid not. They're very, very adept at getting people to vote against their own interests. They're very good at making, very convincing arguments and then not doing what they said they would do anyway and blaming it on someone else. So they won't be doomed. It would be nice to think that as a result of Brexit, the Conservative Party in the UK itself became unelectable for a little while. But it is difficult to say without a super effective opposition at the moment. Maybe they'll just be the opposition, but still there and thereabouts. I don't know. But to say that they're doomed, unfortunately, no, they're not. There will always need to be a party who's batting for the wealthy elite. Because the wealthy elite are not just going to go, oh, the party we all supported has disappeared up its own arse. Oh, well, that's that. I suppose we'll just have to pay our taxes and behave ourselves. No, they'll get behind someone else. Or get behind that party and just wait for them to come through it again. I mean, everyone knew when Tony Blair came to power in 1997, the Conservatives were not coming back to power for a good long while. And that had, there's two things that led to that. First of all, Tony Blair was really effective. Second of all, the Conservatives completely shat the bed. And there was no getting away from it. Quite frankly, it was rather remarkable they got away with it in 1992. But they certainly weren't getting away with it in 1997. So everyone knew that, the next few people to become Conservative Party leader were not going to have much chance at all. They'll just take the same view. They will take the same view that they'll be out in the wilderness for a little bit, but eventually they'll keep putting their message through. The Daily Mail will still be around. The Daily Telegraph will still be around. These papers supporting this agenda. They'll still be there. They'll still be feeding the public with stuff. People will soon forget that those same papers were basically advocating this disastrous Brexit. And the Brexit may never actually come to be. If Brexit never comes to be, those papers will still carry on saying what they've said. So I agree we don't need Conservative politics. I agree it's a shambles. And the reason why I think it's a shambles is not just because I'm on the left wing and that's where, I see the best sense. I think just from an objective point of view, if you look at what the Conservative Party leaders, their government say and what they do, they're always two different things. They're always two very different things. They say they're funding the NHS when they're actually withdrawing funding from the NHS. They say that they're reducing unemployment when actually unemployment is increasing because they fiddle the figures. When you've got a government that says one thing and does another, that sort of tells you that form of politics they know isn't going to convince the electorate if they were honest. But it isn't honest, and honesty doesn't pay. People keep saying, I should stand for Parliament. I have no chance. No chance. Not a cat in hell's chance. Honest. I'm not saying there are no honest politicians. I think you get some who, have a few qualities. They happen to be a bit lucky. They get away with being honest. But that's what it is, getting away with being honest. It really, unfortunately, doesn't pay to be honest in politics. That's the sad fact of the matter. And that's something we have a responsibility for. The fact that we allow politicians to get away with lies is why they lie. It gives them what they want. But anyway, that's my view on that one. Next one, it says, here we are 12 months on and what has changed? Answer, it is even more clear that no deal is even more of a disaster. Preparations will not be in place and the NHS is under more pressure. The solution is really easy, revoke and stay. Done enough damage and lost thousands of jobs already. Yes, we have. And we're going to lose tens of thousands more regardless of what we do. It's interesting about the 12 months though and what has changed. Because I would say, so 12 months ago, we had the withdrawal agreement. It was yet to be agreed by I don't think it had been. No, that was last July, I believe. So it had been agreed by Cabinet. I think by then, if I got my dates right, Boris Johnson, David Davis had alley-ooped, and they were just getting ready to get it through Parliament. It seems weird, doesn't it, that it was actually ready a year ago, and yet it was not until December that it was intended to go to Parliament for a vote, and then was pulled, and it eventually didn't get voted on until January. But what I would say what has changed in the last 12 months is it's become clear we're not going to leave the EU with a deal. That's what's become clear in the last year. But, each 12 months, bizarre things have happened. If we say, what's changed between 2016 and 2017? 2016, we were going to be leaving the EU, doing our own trade deals, but we were going to still have access to the single market. We were going to have a Norway-style arrangement. That's what we were going to have, or Switzerland, whatever you prefer. That didn't happen. That in 2017, that all changed. The Brexiteers decided, no, that's not what we're going to do at all. So that's what changed in the first 12 months. Then 2017 to 2018, we had all the red lines in place. So we had this withdrawal agreement and that's all it was. An agreement on how we withdraw from the EU. Not an agreement on how we conduct ourselves with the EU in the long term. There was no final agreement because all these red lines on every possible link you can have with the EU. No, red line there. Red line. In other words, Theresa May didn't want to deal with that. She wanted, that to be put off till later. Leave the EU first, then worry about it was essentially the plan, I think. And then, from summer 2018 to summer 2019, what's changed? the deal is dead and buried. It has been for some time. We are either leaving without a deal or we are not leaving. That seems to be it. It's not impossible that we'd leave with a deal. You can't rule out, extending again, having a general election, and then the change of parliament suddenly gets behind a deal. But I think that's much, as time has gone on, Brexit, of course, has become much more polarised, not just in the country, but also within parliament. Often the country is a reflection on parliament anyway, rather than the other way around, which it should be. It's bizarre, that. But yeah, I would say that's what's changed there. The idea about no deal being even more of a disaster, it was always going to be a disaster. It was always effectively impossible. The government just used no deal preparation as an excuse to give yet more public money to their rich mates. That's all that's happened. We've prepared nothing. We have prepared nothing. Or at least nothing that works, because every time they've trialled, done a test run on some system, doesn't work. Every single trial has failed spectacularly. And even when you look at some other countries that have been seriously preparing, all it's doing is it's throwing yourself into the cellar when a huge hurricane is coming. That's what you're doing. That's all you're really doing. It's not going to stop your house blowing away. It's just keeping you sort of okay through it so that you live. But we haven't even done that. So yeah, you could argue from a point of view, no deal even more disastrous because we don't have preparations. And never mind this £2.1 billion that we've now put into it. What have we put it into? What? And £2.1 billion is nothing. It's, all these little £1 billion and £2 billion that Boris Johnson is talking about, they're just there to impress an electorate for whom £1 billion is a crap load of money. It's not for a country, though. So, yeah. Next one. I laughed at this one. A little says someone was saying here, Farage has already said he will not. So this was about whether because the Conservative, if there were to be a general election and the Brexit Party are standing, they split each other's vote, and therefore in lots of constituencies will let in Labour, let in the Lib Dems, maybe even sometimes let in the Green Party. Who knows? I wouldn't have thought the SNP are going to gain too much from it, because in Scotland neither of them is likely to have much traction. But it's every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. It's not like the Conservatives have no seats in Scotland. But, in terms of whether they'll do a deal, I had already noted in that video Boris Johnson has said he will not deal with the Brexit Party. Someone here saying that Farage has already said he will not deal with the Conservatives. Someone had to point out that Farage is not exactly a man of his word, is he? And no, this is the thing. There's a wider issue as well. There's a lot of people thinking a certain thing either can or can't be true based on what a politician has said. But Theresa May, for example, said when she became Prime Minister, we're not going to have an early general election. I'll bet she bloody well wishes she'd stuck to that now. But she said, we're not going to have an early general election. No, absolutely not. No. No need. Don't need it. Short while later, oh, do you know what we should have, though? We should have an early general election. Boris Johnson is not exactly known for being consistent with what he says, and neither is Nigel Farage. So they may. The only reason that makes me think they won't is not what they say, but the fact that a lot of people are making the assumption, it's not an unreasonable assumption, that what the Brexit Party wants is Brexit. And if Boris Johnson delivers a no-deal Brexit, then the Brexit Party will go, oh, well, there's no need for us to stand in a general election then. No, they're standing. They're standing. For two reasons. First of all, I don't believe that Brexit is what the Brexit Party really want. Well, I don't believe it's what Nigel Farage wants anyway. Where's he going to get his money from after that? But the second reason is this. You could argue that, let's say we've left the EU. And this actually might be worth doing a whole video on, but really quickly. We've left the EU without a deal. Brexit Party delighted. There's going to be a general election straight away after. Do they withdraw their candidates? What if they withdraw their candidates? Let's say the Conservatives come back to power, but most of those Conservative MPs don't want a no deal. And we end up negotiating a deal with the EU, even though we've left without a deal. We can't stay without a deal. We need a deal. And we end up negotiating a deal that actually the Brexit Party are not happy with. And they've gone, oh, we withdrew from the election so that you could do this. How annoying. No, they will use that as an excuse to still stand. and try and they'll not get any decent number of seats. They'll get a few maybe. Well, they probably will get some. That's, you know, so I don't see a deal being possible for that reason, not because either of them have said so. But again, interesting to note the idea, do not believe what politicians say, even if they're politicians that you think are honourable. You know, and this comes on to my next one, which is this. The US Congress has said that it will stop any trade agreement between the UK and the US if the integrity of the Good Friday Agreement is damaged, which of course it will be if we leave without a deal. Since Johnson is heading towards a no-deal Brexit and a hard Irish border, he is also facing no deal with the US, since about 44% of the trade is with the EU and about 13% with the US, indeed, and 12% of our trade is down to agreements made by the EU with other countries. Yep. In total, we are looking at losing agreements which relate to 79% of our export trade. Since the referendum result, the EU has concluded agreements with Japan, Vietnam and Mercosur, which is, yes, the South American bloc. Liam Fox managed to get agreements in principle with Iceland, Norway and the Faroe Islands. There are a few others as well. Not exactly a pound-for-pound substitute for losses from Brexit. Now, and this I've said the same. I mean, this happened months ago. This is not a new thing from the Democrats in Congress. They said it months ago, and I've repeated it months ago. And the line I am absolutely taking is in agreement with this, that, you know, the Irish lobby is very powerful, and the Democrats, as a result, are saying we will block any trade. Like, Donald Trump will not make a trade deal unless we leave with no deal. And even then, that's not good enough for him. They've recently been saying we need to amend our tax laws. We need to get rid of the, you know, tax laws that we have that, you know, make people that are wealthy pay tax. But Congress won't allow that, because that means we're you know, knackering Ireland. I'd be happy to buy that. But here's the thing. The Democrats are also the same Democrats that said they would hold Donald Trump to account. Well, they have been presented more than enough evidence to impeach him. Are they impeaching him? No. Are they being honest, therefore? I would say not. They're also the same ones who said they would not permit Donald Trump to have any money for his stupid, fatuous wall. Well, he's just nicked a load off the military budget. Have they really stopped that? No. So, although I accept that the Democrats are saying these things, and I accept that they mean it, I also understand that they've said a lot of other things that I accepted that they meant and they didn't follow through on. Don't believe things just because a politician said so. Even though this is likely, we can't say it as a statement of fact. And then finally, back to another little USA one. So, someone here saying, obviously in favour of Brexit, he says, you know, USA is constantly getting away with border checks and tariffs on notion of national security, and WTO does nothing. Yep, I accept that. Just call it national security, leave, don't bother erecting any checkpoints or border checks, and it will be just the same as now. It will only be the Irish who will be obligated by EU rules to check checkpoints, blah, blah, blah. But that's where you're wrong. You see, here's the thing. You are correct in saying that the USA gets away with those border checks and they cite national security, and the WTO does nothing, indeed, granted. The reason the WTO does nothing is not because the USA is just going, ooh, national security, because then anyone would do the same. Why bother having the WTO at all if anyone can just ignore those rules and go, national security? That's not the reason. The reason why the USA gets away with ignoring those rules is the same reason any country gets away with ignoring rules, including the UK, and that is because it's powerful. Right? Now, the UK is also, we are going to become significantly less powerful under these circumstances, of course. Our power reduces. But here is the thing. It is effectively might makes right. It shouldn't be. We should agree rules, we should agree laws, and we should stick by them. But we don't. So, yes, we could potentially cite national security and do nothing. Unless, of course, a more powerful country decides to get sniffy with us. Now, are there any more powerful countries that would be really upset if we ignored WTO rules? Yes, there are. The United States and China. Are they more powerful than us? Oh, yes. And they will definitely be more powerful than us come, you know, a no-deal Brexit. So we won't be able to ignore it. We won't at all be able to ignore it. Because might makes right and we won't have the might. The USA gets away with it because it is, well, frankly, in these terms, the most powerful country in the world. That's it. Simple as that. So no, we will have to. We will ignore it, and so will the EU for a little while, because even the EU don't want this. They're not going to force Ireland to do it straight away. They'd rather wait a few, because at the end of the day, we don't absolutely need them straight away. Our like quality of goods, our standards are aligned with the EU at the moment. That's not going to change overnight. It'll change. It'll take a few months to change. And by then, there's any number of other reasons why we will have gone running with our begging bowl to the EU for a deal. So it's very likely both the EU and the UK will both ignore it for a little while. We won't be able to do it forever, because the WTO will force us to do. Not the WTO, actually, that's not true. What actually happens is other countries complain, goes through a legal process. At the end of it, the WTO has to say that, yeah, we've breached the rules, so we have to behave ourselves. And even then, there's no police coming and force you to do it. What actually happens is those other countries, if we don't comply, are then permitted to take punitive action of their own. In other words, our agreements mean nothing. Obviously, no one wants that. So we will comply. But we won't have to do it immediately. But anyway, that's what we've got to say on that one. And that is this week's. Hope you found it interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.